Hi all, hi church. It's great to be able to join you in this virtual walk that you're on today. What a fantastic creative idea, Earl. And really, really good to do this. Strange times we're in, aren't we? Church is looking and feeling something and somewhat different. Ephesians 1:7 says, "In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace." As you probably know, this verse falls within Ephesians 1:3-14, which in the original language is one long verse. It's almost like Paul can't help but his words just tumbling out of him as he starts to reflect on the work of Christ and what it means for us and how amazing it is. He can't hold himself back. It's like the fountain, the river, the overflow of water is just gushing forth from him. And so we have this one long sentence in Ephesians chapter 1. But this verse 7 talks about redemption. But before I say something about redemption, how do we get there? Well, Paul begins verse 7 with "in him." The redemption and all that we have is in Christ. It's through his blood. It's Christocentric, as some would say, centered in Christ. That's where Paul begins, and that's where he always begins. But what is the redemption that he talks about that we have received? Well, redemption means to be bought back. Behind it is the picture or analogy of slaves being paid for to free them from their slave masters. They're being owned or being bought back and now belong to someone else. The bigger picture behind that is that of the Exodus, where God chose a slave people and chose them to be his people and gave them a land, and they became his free, chosen people. Paul unpacks this redemption by talking about forgiveness and says that it's redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, almost like Paul is interpreting it for us, that this redemption, this freedom that comes is to do with the forgiveness of sins, to have my slate wiped clean. Anything that I do that impacts my relationship with God and my relationship with people, I can be forgiven. I can be let go. I can have the slate wiped clean. Still amazes me. And I need that day by day. It's not just something that's happened for me in the past, but day by day I can come to God and say, "God, I've let you down again. I've not shown people what you're really like in my conduct and attitudes, my behavior. Lord, forgive me again." And for those areas where I'm not even aware that I've not demonstrated who you really are, forgive me, wipe my slate clean. Let me continue to be free. Some traditions do that more regularly than we do, but it is good for us to remember forgiveness is a daily experience for us. So maybe take a moment this day and just ask God to wash your slate clean again and to know that redemption, the feeling of that redemption, the forgiveness, the freedom that comes from that. And Paul finishes this verse by saying it's in accordance with the riches of God's grace. In some ways, Paul is saying, well, what's the measure of this redemption? What's the measure of this forgiveness? And he's really saying there is no measure. The riches of God's grace is a measure we can't get our arms around, we can't fathom, we can't get to the depths of or the top of or the size of. It's so big and so large. It's like this redemption, this forgiveness is just beyond your comprehension. That's how much there is redemption and forgiveness in Christ. That's the measure of it. So today, be encouraged. We live in challenging times, strange times. But know that through it all, however we respond, whether we always live up to the core that we have in Christ, whether we always demonstrate Christ as well as we'd like, there is redemption for us. We can be free. We can be forgiven. We can live according to the riches of God's grace and enjoy his amazing, bountiful provision. I need it. I'm sure you need it too. God bless you. I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon. Keep the faith and keep walking after Jesus.